Okay, so I believe that we should start. Now, once again, my name is Mitro Kamenko, and I am a solutions engineer here at StarWind. And the topic of today's webinar is how to overcome your hardware limits and go beyond to the next frontier. Now, since clouds have recently become the talk of the town, I wanted to discuss the possibilities, benefit, and challenges that come with the deployment of a high availability storage in the cloud. Now, for starters, the most reasonable thing to do would be discussing the possible use cases for its configuration, and some of the advantages are the minimization of infrastructure resource costs, and at the same time, improve the elastic properties, which allow services to scale up or down to current demand. Now, other than meeting the service level agreement requirements of the solution, high availability has been one of the biggest challenges for providers, especially when choosing from one of the many services that can be used to improve the availability, such as checkpointing, load balancing, and redundancy. Now, until today's date, the requirements of a on-demand service, broad network access, resource pooling are the main components that just can't seem to lose their popularity level. Now, with all that put into scope of consideration, let's make an attempt to weigh out the pros and cons of a cloud infrastructure when comparing it to a, believe it or not, currently can be considered a legacy on-premise infrastructure. Now, some of the first things that I wanted to mention that a cloud infrastructure would include a certain type of workload that would be connected with the assistance of a software-defined network. Now, the first thing I wanted to bring up is the comparison of on-premises versus cloud. There's actually some certain criteria that we'll actually look into just a bit in the next slide. And some of the questions that the clients may be asking themselves is what's the cost? What's the hardware requirement? Is there an end of life date? Is there no hardware at all? And what's the competition like? The third topic would be the budget, timeline, management of the whole solution as a whole. And how would it be possible to find the answers to your questions if you have any in the process of managing your infrastructure? And the fifth would be the demonstration of the solution which we have on hand and looking into the configuration which is required. Now, when comparing the outcome of a future deployment and the process of making a choice between on-premise or cloud deployment, some of the considerations that we mainly take into account would include, for starters, the protection from downtime, which I believe is the most important aspect of a infrastructure as a whole. Now, based on our experience over the years, we can actually clearly state that a complete withdrawal of any doubts of infrastructure downtime is completely impossible. Now, some of the reasons that which may directly affect your business continuity would require you to make room for power outages, network throughput, and/or availability, along with support and maintenance. Now, as far as power outages goes, you never know what's the power stability like within the cloud infrastructure or the data store where the role is hosted or any kind of your cloud VM. So you never know, there may be a thunder there or a hurricane come by, and if you actually haven't separated your categories in between the VMs, there's quite a high chance that the VM won't be up and running. Now, network throughput and availability, once again, the connectivity between your data center and cloud infrastructure would once again be one of the most important things to consider and possibly improve the throughput if not purchase an additional package that would provide you with maximum bandwidth. Now, the support and maintenance, once again, equally important as just two previous ones is when it comes to managing your infrastructure or configuring it. For starters, it's quite important to look into the performance which you're able to achieve once configured. Benchmarking the solution is another important aspect to be taken into account before running the production, which is quite obvious, right? Maintenance wise, once again, it would be great if you were to have somebody on call or available on site to whiz out any of your scuffs and creaks. Or additionally, if you manage to overcome the first two or last one, you could possibly turn out with the creation of a single point of a disaster within your infrastructure. So these are the 3 points that are quite important. In other words, the single point of failure could always be something where you were never prepared for. Now, why not make your cloud or solution provider responsible for that? Which is an additional question you may want to ask yourself and address it in the first appropriate situation where you would be having a rundown on the prices and plans for your cloud infrastructure. So if a provider responsibility of the solution or the cloud infrastructure is capable of providing you with some additional cost services that would allow you to play it on the safe side, I think that would be a great benefit. Now, the second aspect is eliminating the loss of revenue. Now, for example, let's take a case where a startup would be looking into accommodating the requirement of investing into a infrastructure without any particular requirements on hand. Now, in that case, they would only have the requirements or the solutions which they are planning to spin up of their redundant infrastructure and provide you with some theory of previous practices if you have none available on hand. Now, that may lead to a case of hitting a roadblock after investigating on-premises solution that are fairly high, and scalability might turn out to be the issue. Now, as far as scalability goes, say in this case, there are no certain requirements as to the amount of usable storage, possible future growth, IOPS, once again, network connectivity, switch topology, network connectivity. So those are quite important reasons to address questions to them. Now, in order to find a way out, the hustle would actually include all of the 9 circles of Dante, and why not make the cloud lead the way? So, as far as cloud goes, it would actually be much more easier for you to manage your infrastructure and modify its resources upon requirements. Now, third aspect is simplifying infrastructure maintenance. Now, in certain cases of infrastructures which combine cloud and on-premise together, you would have actually multiple tools that you would need to access, or your network administrators would need to learn and overcome quite a steep learning curve if some new solutions are introduced along the way. And since simplicity is something that Silicon Valley actually fails to achieve at time, and the process of configuration and managing the redundancy of a future or existing infrastructure would definitely not be the animal you can trust your neighbor with. Now, that's another benefit that brings us to the cloud. No cables, no noise, and no self-rolling electricity bills. So the maintenance cost of a cloud infrastructure would definitely have the upper hand here. But seriously, the advantages of having a qualified support representative available on-site or 24/7 remotely are actually endless, and you never know when that might come in handy when you're having a vacation or somewhere on your weekend where you'd have no access to the internet or mobile connectivity. That person would actually be monitoring your infrastructure and blowing the bells and whistles once needed. Now, an additional aspect, achieving maximum flexibility. Now, once again, just like the previous three equally important, and since some infrastructures have never been deployed previously and may require some recalculations of its resource demand, it would be possible to accommodate them within the cloud with a few clicks. And even in this case, the possibility of pinpointing the most beneficial instance type is a matter of time. So you can make that switch easily once the future growth starts snowballing on you. Now, the last one, but not least, once again, would be improving the resiliency and agility of your infrastructure. Now, the resiliency provided by a cloud infrastructure is actually limitless, and a cross-region replicated storage volume would actually be the best option for configuring a highly fault-tolerant environment, be that 2 nodes, 3 nodes, or even more. So you can always add them along the way. Now, one of the methods which I wanted to bring to your attention today is the minimal configuration of such an HA scenario. Now, in this webinar, we're actually focused on the best practices of deploying an HA in Azure. And as you can see on the diagram, we have a minimal configuration of StarWind's VSAN in Azure. And just so you know, just as previously, our on-premise environment, it can start with 2 nodes, and no external witness is actually required. But not that there's a certain limit to not having witness availability, but it would once again be possible for you to deploy a VM which can serve the purpose of a witness and be connected to a heartbeat channel, which, when broken, the witness would rule out in the voting process and determine which one of the hosts has the most valid data. Now, the network backend that is responsible for the synchronization of data between the instances can actually be represented by just 2 single gigabit Azure network interfaces. And as 2 interfaces are located in different regions, there is a task to actually interconnect VM nets to and from these regions. Now, there are a few standard approaches to do that. You can either create an Azure VPN connection between VM nets, or you can configure VNet peering, which is not available at all, as far as I know, of Azure regions at the moment. And in short, it would allow you to connect 2 separate VNets without using a site-to-site VPN link. Now, VPN links rely on gateways which cost quite a buck per the hour. So this allows you to configure a vastly simplified network topology. And for the purpose of today's demonstration, we've actually pre-configured 2 Azure instances, both based on Windows Server Data Center, and installed and pre-configured StarWind Virtual SAN on them. So let me just go ahead and access them real quick. So this is one of them, and they're actually clustered, and the storage replicated by the assistance of StarWind VSAN is actually serving a purpose of replicating the data in between the partners. So let me just start off by the introduction to the StarWind Management Console. Now, as you can see on the left hand here, you have a single host. It would be possible to connect the partner also, but just for simplicity purposes, we decided not to do that. Now, we actually created 2 StarWind devices, connected 8 sessions to each, and the details of the device can be found here. So just for demonstration purposes, it was a small size device, witness of course, and so is the second, not that big of a device. Now, once the replication has been configured over different subnets, just to eliminate the possibility of data corruption or split brain, just to let you know, it would also be possible to extend the size of that replicated volume whenever there's a need to, so which can also be considered as a benefit in process of pinpointing your requirements of an existing infrastructure, for example. Now, once that was done, we've created a role and placed it on top of a clustered shared volume. Once again, replicated with the assistance of StarWind. Now, network communication, which consists of the dedication of two networks, one for the communication of VSAN, and the second used for the synchronization of data in between the host, along with the network, mainly implied for communication of cluster and client. We have then, once again, the nodes, partners, and the role. So let me just briefly access this role in order to demonstrate its availability to you. So for the time being, it's just a simple placeholder, Windows Server VM, which doesn't have any workload on it, and it's mainly used for demonstration purposes of a failover, which is something that I'd like to demonstrate you by simulating a real-world environment where a single host or a region may become unavailable, and the mission-critical application would still require access. The second host would be capable of actually withstanding that IOPS hit and provide you with enough resource and compute power for providing that access. So without further ado, I believe we currently have it on the second host, and that is something that I will access just right now and simulate a host failure on the back end here. So just bear with me here for a second. We'll be right at it. So here is the second host, and all I'm going to do is just soft reset it and initiate an automated failover. And once again, just wanted to attract your attention to the current health status of our storage, and eventually it should actually specify the reasons for any possible failure of that storage. So let me just get it all on the screen here at the same time and hit the reset button. Okay, so as you can see, the VM has now executed a live migration from one host to the other. As you remember, it was previously accessible and running, and it should once again be like that. So the amount of time that this process would take would be directly dependent on the type of instance that you're running it on. So these instances are not that beefy, and for the purposes of a demonstration today, just wanted you to take into account that this configuration that you see performing at the moment is the most cost-effective scenario, which meets the requirement of creating a replicated storage volume within the cloud. Now, as you can see, it is now once again accessible and is currently located on the first instance as it was previously, and should now be once again accessible to all of the clients. Now, just going to recover here real quick. But as you can see, the storage health status is still as working properly, but it may be just to an increased latency of a cloud infrastructure, but there we have it. StarWind would actually be capable of identifying the reasons for the failure of the replicated storage volume or the replication process on its own, and actually specify the networks which it's worth looking into. Now, once the second host comes back online, the storage would once again be replicated in between the partners and should be accessible to both of them at the same time. So that's that for the demonstration process and the webinar on today's topic. Feel free to address any questions you may have or any possible suggestions for the future webinars. Well, great. We actually have a first question. Thank you, Lewis. He just wanted to find out if it would be possible for me to talk about VTL and Azure integration as well. Yes. As far as the integration of the virtual tape library or the emulation of a virtual tape loader changer device within Azure, that would be possible, and the only requirement would be a stable network connection and throughput to an on-premise or a partner instance, which you're planning to utilize for either storing your backups or providing access to that tape changer loader. And another option would actually be the configuration of a retention policy from an on-premise instance that would offload the on-premise tapes based on the configuration of the retention policy, that is, to the cloud and directly to an Azure blob storage, which can be connected to a Azure instance if need be. Okay, another question. What kind of storage should be used in Azure? Store Simple? Well, the storage which was used within this configuration, let me just specify that for you right now. So it was based on the configuration of SSDs and is considered as general purpose V1 with premium performance. And currently it is located in North Europe. Okay, gentlemen, so just feel free to address any other questions you may have. Well, so thank you for attending our webinar today. I hope that you found it interesting. And feel free to provide us with any suggestions, fill out the questionnaire, and specify any possible improvements which we can make in the near future. Thank you for your attention. Have a great evening. Bye.